The Velen were a gentle people. They had lived on their homeworld of Thesan for over 10,000 years. Their cities were made of white stone and blue glass. Their gardens stretched across entire continents. They did not know war. They did not build weapons. They believed that kindness was the highest form of intelligence. For 300 cycles, the Velen had been members of the Galactic Concord. This was a council of 47 different species from across the galaxy. The Concord decided matters of trade, peace, and law. The Velen were not powerful members. They were not rich, but they were respected because they were healers. Velen doctors had saved millions of lives across hundreds of worlds. Velen philosophers had taught entire civilizations the meaning of compassion. The Velen were also empaths. They could feel the emotions of other living beings. When someone near them was happy, they felt that happiness. When someone was in pain, they felt that pain too. This gift made them gentle. It made them kind. But it also made them vulnerable. The Drath hegemony had watched the Velen for a long time. The Drath were conquerors. Their empire stretched across 200 star systems. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who stood in their way. The Drath looked at Thesan and saw a world without defenses. They saw gentle people who would not fight back. They saw an easy target. On the first day of summer, the Drath invasion fleet appeared in Velen space. 300 warships blocked out the stars. The Velen had no army to stop them. They had no navy to fight them. All they had was hope that the galaxy would come to save them. Ambassador Una of Earth was sitting in the Great Hall of the Galactic Concord when the Velen distress signal arrived. She was a small woman with dark hair and tired eyes. She had served as Earth's representative for only 2 years. Humanity was still new to the galactic community. They had been traveling between stars for barely 2 centuries. To the older species, humans were like children who just learned to walk. Una watched the holographic display in the center of the hall. It showed Thesan burning. Velen cities were being destroyed. Ships full of refugees were trying to escape, but the Drath were shooting them down one by one. The screams of the dying echoed through the transmission before it cut to static. The Arzelian Prime spoke first. The Arzelians were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the Concord. They had vast armadas and ancient technology. If anyone could stop the Drath, it was them. "This matter is unfortunate," the Arzelian Prime said. His holographic form flickered with calm indifference. However, the Concord must consider the economic implications of intervention. A war with the hegemony would disrupt trade routes across 17 sectors. The cost would be unacceptable. Una felt her hands tighten into fists beneath the table. The Morith Collective spoke next. They were a species of linked minds, thousands of individuals thinking as one. "We have analyzed the situation," the Morith said in their strange, echoing voice. "Intervention has a 73% probability of escalating into a wider conflict. We recommend maintaining neutrality to preserve stability." One by one, the representatives of the Concord gave their excuses. The Syndicate of Worlds calculated that helping the Velen would reduce their quarterly profits by 3%. The Outer Ring Federation did not want to anger the hegemony because they shared a border. The Assembly of Free Peoples expressed deep sympathy, but could not commit military resources at this time. Una listened to all of it. She watched species with the power to stop a genocide choose instead to do nothing. They used big words and complicated explanations, but the meaning was simple. The Velen were not worth the trouble. Their lives were not valuable enough to risk anything for. When the vote came, 46 species voted to abandon the Velen to their fate. Earth was asked to vote last, as was tradition for the newest members. Una stood up slowly. Every eye in the hall turned to her. She was aware of how small humanity was in this room. How weak, how young. Earth had 12 patrol ships and 1 carrier. They could not fight the hegemony. They could barely defend their own borders. But some things mattered more than power. Earth abstains from this vote, Una said. Her voice was steady even though her heart was pounding. And Earth formally objects to the decision of this council. Murmurs spread through the hall. The Arzelian Prime tilted his massive head. The humans object? This is unexpected. May I ask on what grounds? On the grounds that this is wrong. Una stepped forward, her small figure somehow filling the vast space. The Velen came to us for help. They trusted us. They believed that being part of this Concord meant something. They believed that we would protect each other. The Concord is not a military alliance, the Morith interjected. It is a framework for cooperation. Nothing in our charter requires. I know what the charter says, Una interrupted. I also know that somewhere on Thiessen right now, a mother is holding her child while their city burns around them. She is hoping that someone will come. She's believing that the galaxy is not so cruel as to let her die. The hall was silent. You have all given your reasons, Una continued. Economics, politics, probability calculations. But let me tell you what I see. I see 47 species with more ships, more weapons, and more power than the Drath could ever dream of. I see a council that could end this invasion with a single unified response. And I see that council choosing to look away. The Arzelian Prime made a sound that might have been a laugh. Ambassador Una, your passion is admirable but naive. What would you have us do? Sacrifice our people for strangers? Risk our prosperity for a species that has nothing to offer us? Yes, Una's answer was immediate. That is exactly what I would have you do. Because that is what it means to be good. The hall erupted in noise. Representatives shouted objections. Others laughed at the foolish human. The Morith calculated the statistical improbability of altruism affecting policy decisions. Una waited for the noise to die down. Then she spoke again. Earth has 12 ships. We have 1 carrier. We are the weakest military power in this room. She paused. But those 12 ships are going to Thiessen. Complete silence fell over the hall. You cannot be serious, the Arzelian Prime said slowly. 12 ships against 300? You would be destroyed in hours. Probably, Una agreed. But at least we will be able to look at ourselves in the mirror afterward. Can any of you say the same? She did not wait for an answer. She turned and walked out of the great hall, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. Behind her, she heard the whispers starting. The humans had lost their minds. The humans were going to die. The humans were fools. Maybe they were right about all of it. But as Una stepped onto her ship and ordered a course for Earth Command, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. There were some things worse than death. Watching innocent people die and doing nothing was one of them. The Velen were alone. The galaxy had abandoned them. But humanity was coming. Captain Taiho had commanded the Soul's Light for 15 years. He had seen combat twice in that time. Both battles had been small, quick, and winnable. He had never lost a crew member under his command. He had never faced an enemy he could not defeat. Now he stood in the briefing room of Earth Command Station, surrounded by every ship captain in humanity's fleet. 12 captains for 12 ships. This was everything Earth had. And it was not nearly enough. Admiral Jizu stood at the front of the room. She was 63 years old, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had served in space for 40 years. She had built this fleet from nothing. These 12 ships were her life's work, and she was about to send them to die. You have all seen the reports, Jizu said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were not. The Velen homeworld is under full invasion. The Drath have 300 warships in the system. They are destroying everything. Cities, hospitals, refugee ships. Nothing is being spared. She pressed a button and a holographic display appeared. It showed Thesan from orbit. Half the planet was covered in smoke and fire. Red dots marked draft ship positions. They were everywhere. The Galactic Concord has voted to maintain neutrality, Jisoo continued. They have officially forbidden any member species from intervening. Any ship that crosses into Velan space will be in violation of galactic law. We will receive no support, no supplies, no reinforcements. If we fail, Earth may face sanctions or worse. Captain Mireille raised her hand. She was younger than the other captains, only 35 years old. But she had the hardest eyes in the room. Her grandmother had survived the Bizan fire during the last war on Earth. She had grown up on stories of what happened when people looked away from suffering. Admiral, what are our orders? Jisoo took a deep breath. Officially, I cannot order you to go. This mission is not authorized by Earth government. It is not sanctioned by the Concord. Any captain who goes will be acting against direct orders from both. She let that sink in. Unofficially, she continued, I am telling you that there are 17 million Velans still alive on Thesan. Every hour we wait, that number gets smaller. The Drath are not taking prisoners. They are not accepting surrenders. They are committing genocide. Taiho looked around the room. He saw fear on every face. He also saw something else. Something that looked like shame. The same shame he felt in his own chest. What can 12 ships do against 300? Asked Captain Junho of the Ancient Star. He was the oldest captain in the fleet, close to retirement. He had grandchildren back on Earth. We can buy time, Jisoo replied. Our tactical team has identified an evacuation route through the outer system. If we can hold the Drath at the primary jump point for long enough, refugee ships might be able to escape. How long is long enough? Junho asked. Jisoo hesitated. That was answer enough. We would need to hold for at least 12 hours, she finally said. Probably longer. Our simulations suggest. Tell us, Taiho said quietly. Jisoo met his eyes. Our simulations suggest that after 6 hours, we will have lost half our ships. After 12 hours, we will have lost all of them. Silence filled the room. So this is a suicide mission, said Captain Sujin of the Bizan's memory. She was a small woman with a scar across her left cheek. She had earned it fighting pirates near the outer colonies 10 years ago. Yes, Jisoo admitted. I will not lie to you. If you go to Thesan, most of you will not come back. Perhaps none of you. Mireille stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. My grandmother was 9 years old when the bombs fell on Bizan. She told me that the worst part was not the fire. It was not the pain. It was the silence. The world watched and did nothing. That silence followed her for the rest of her life. She looked around at the other captains. The Velan are empaths. They feel everything. Right now, they are feeling 17 million of their people die. And they are feeling the galaxy's silence. Junho shook his head slowly. Mireille, I understand. But we have families. We have people who depend on us. Is it right to throw away our lives for strangers we have never met? Is it right to keep our lives by watching strangers die? Mireille shot back. What kind of humanity would we be if we made that choice? What would we tell our children? That we were safe while innocents burned? Taiho listened to the argument go back and forth. He thought about his own family. His wife Ye-Jin, who was waiting for him back on Earth. His son Do-Yun, who was only 7 years old and wanted to be a starship captain just like his father. What would he tell Do-Yun if he stayed? How would he explain that he had chosen safety over saving lives? And what would Do-Yun think of him if he learned the truth? Taiho stood up. The room went quiet. I joined the fleet because I wanted to protect people, he said. Not because I wanted to live forever. Not because I wanted to be safe. I wanted to stand between innocent people and those who would hurt them. He walked to the front of the room and stood beside Admiral Jesu. The Velen are innocent. The Drath are hurting them. There is no one else coming to help. So I am going. One by one, the other captains rose to their feet. Captain Sujin was next. The Bizen's memory has never run from a fight. We are not starting today. Captain Myray smiled grimly. The Daegu Rising will follow the soul's light wherever it goes. Even old Captain Junho stood, his joints creaking. The ancient star has a few good fights left in her. Might as well make the last one count for something. In less than a minute, all 12 captains were standing. All 12 ships were committed. Admiral Jesu looked at them with something that might have been pride or grief or both. You understand that I cannot officially authorize this mission. We understand, Taiho said. Jesu nodded slowly. Then let the record show that this briefing never happened. All 12 ships are scheduled for routine maintenance. Patrols in Sector 7. If those ships happen to experience simultaneous navigation malfunctions, then accidentally take them through Velen space. She allowed herself a small smile. Well, accidents happen. She stepped forward and placed her hand on Taiho's shoulder. Make it count, Captain. Make them remember. Taiho straightened his spine. We will, Admiral. 2 hours later, the fleet launched. 12 ships against an empire. 12 crews who knew they were going to die. They burned through jump space toward Thiessen, carrying humanity's answer to the galaxy's indifference. On the bridge of the Soul's Light, Taiho sat in his command chair and watched the stars blur around them. Lieutenant Yunji sat at the tactical station, running simulation after simulation. Each one ended the same way. Total fleet destruction. Sir, Yunji said quietly, I have been going over the numbers again. There is no scenario where we survive this. I know, Taiho replied. Then why are we doing it? Taiho was quiet for a long moment. Through the view screen, he could see the other ships of the fleet. The Daegu Rising, the Bizen's Memory, the Ancient Star, ships full of people who had chosen to die for strangers. Because someday, somewhere, someone will tell the story of what happened at Thiessen, he finally said. They will tell their children about the day the galaxy abandoned an innocent species. And I want those children to know that not everyone looked away. I want them to know that 12 ships came. Yunji nodded slowly. She did not look reassured, but she did not look away either. Setting course for Thiessen, she said. We will arrive in 18 hours. 18 hours. Taiho leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. In 18 hours, they would either save millions of lives or die trying. Either way, humanity would keep its promise. The Velen homeworld of Thiessen had burned for 3 days when the human fleet arrived. Captain Taiho stood on the bridge of the Soul's Light and looked at the view screen. What he saw made his stomach turn. The beautiful planet he had seen in the briefing images was gone. Half of Thiessen was covered in black smoke. The other half was on fire. Even from orbit, he could see the glow of burning cities. Drath warships filled the space around the planet. They were everywhere, like a swarm of metal insects. Their ships were angular and ugly, designed to look frightening. Each one was twice the size of any human vessel. Their weapons bristled from every surface. Lieutenant Unji ran the tactical analysis for the 3rd time. Her hands were shaking slightly. Captain, I count 312 Drath warships. They have twice our weapons range. Their shields are 4 times stronger than ours. She swallowed hard. They outnumber us 30 to 1. Understood, Taiho said quietly. Sir, there is more. I am detecting debris fields around the planet. They appear to be the remains of civilian vessels. Refugee ships. Taiho felt something cold settle in his chest. How many? At least 50 ships, sir. The Drath have been shooting down anyone trying to escape. On the view screen, Taiho could see it now. The twisted metal remains of ships that have been full of families, children, people trying to survive. The Drath had destroyed them without mercy. He opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Soul's Light, form up in defensive formation. Our mission is to hold the evacuation corridor and protect any remaining refugee ships. We fight until we cannot fight anymore. Understood, came Captain Marie's voice from the Daegu Rising. We are ready. Ready, said Captain Sujin from the Bizen's memory. Ready, said Captain Junho from the Ancient Star. One by one, all 12 ships confirmed. Taiho could hear the fear in some of their voices. But he could also hear something else, determination. Sir, Yunji said suddenly, the Drath are hailing us. Taiho straightened in his chair. Put them through. The view screen flickered. A Drath commander appeared. His face was covered in dark scales, and his yellow eyes were slitted like a snake's. When he spoke, his voice was a low growl. Human vessels, you have entered restricted space. The Galactic Concord has declared this system under hegemony jurisdiction. You are in violation of non-interference protocols. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Taiho stood up slowly. Hegemony vessel, this is Captain Taiho of the Earthship Soul's Light. We are responding to a humanitarian distress call. Under Earth law, we are required to help any species facing extinction. The Drath commander made a sound that might have been laughter. Earth law? Your laws mean nothing here. Human. Your tiny planet is nothing. Your species is nothing. You have 12 ships. We have 300. This is not a battle. This is suicide. Maybe, Taiho replied. But we are not here to win. We are here to help. Help? The Drath tilted his head. There is no one left to help. The Valen are weak creatures. They do not fight. They only cry and beg. Soon they will all be dead, and we will take their world for ourselves. Taiho felt anger rising in his chest. Hot and bright. The Velen trusted the galaxy to protect them. They believed in peace and kindness. You are punishing them for being gentle. Gentleness is weakness. Kindness is stupidity. The universe belongs to the strong. The Drath leaned forward. Last chance, human. Leave now and you may live. Stay and you will die screaming. Taiho looked at his bridge crew. At Yunji, who was barely 25 years old and had never seen real combat. At his helmsman Sujin, who had a daughter waiting back on Earth. At his weapons officer Dongwu, whose hands were steady even though his face was pale. None of them moved. None of them suggested retreat. Taiho turned back to the view screen. Commander, I am going to tell you something, and I want you to remember it. The Velen are not weak because they chose peace. They are not stupid because they trusted others. They are good. And goodness is not weakness. He took a step forward. You want these people? You come through us first. The Drath commander's eyes narrowed. Then you will die for strangers. What a waste. It is not a waste, Taiho said. It is the most important thing we will ever do. He cut the channel. For a long moment, nothing happened. The Drath fleet hung in space like a predator, deciding when to strike. The human ships formed their defensive line, shields up and weapons hot. Then the first missiles launched. Yunji's voice cut through the tension. Incoming fire. 40 missiles tracking on our position. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Taiho commanded. Return fire. The Soul's Light shuddered as the first missiles impacted against their shields. The bridge lights flickered. Alarms began to wail. On the view screen, Taiho could see the human fleet opening fire. Their weapons seemed so small against the massive Drath warships, but they were hitting their targets. Explosions bloomed on the hull of the nearest Drath cruiser. It was not enough to destroy it, but it was enough to make it bleed. Direct hit on enemy cruiser, Yunji shouted. Their shields are down to 80%. Keep firing, Taiho ordered. Focus all weapons on the lead ships. The battle became chaos. Ships twisted and turned through clouds of missiles and energy beams. The Soul's Light took hit after hit, each one shaking the entire vessel. But she kept fighting. They all kept fighting. 30 minutes into the battle, the Daegu Rising scored the first kill. Captain Myra had pushed her ship dangerously close to a Drath destroyer, close enough to get inside their shield radius. Her weapons punched through the enemy hull at point-blank range. The destroyer exploded in a ball of fire. One down. Murray's voice came through the com, fierce and triumphant. 311 to go. But the humans were taking damage too. The Guangzhou's Pride lost her main engines in hour 1. She could no longer maneuver, but kept firing from a fixed position. The Sejong's Will had a hull breach on Deck 7. 20 crew members were dead. Still, they held the line. Behind them, the evacuation corridor stayed open. Velen refugee ships that had been hiding behind the planet's moon began to move. One by one, they crept toward the escape route that the humans were buying with their lives. Captain, Yunji reported, I am detecting refugee ships moving toward the jump point. 17 ships with approximately 2 million Velen aboard. Good, Taiho said. That is what we are here for. Keep that corridor open. Another impact rocked the Soul's Light. Sparks flew from a console on the left side of the bridge. A crew member screamed and fell. Shields down to 40%. Dongwu shouted. We cannot take much more of this. Taiho gripped his chair. We do not have to take much more. We just have to hold long enough. Hour 2. The Mokbo's courage went down. Captain Yejin had sacrificed her ship to block a Drath attack run on the refugee convoy. She rammed her vessel directly into the enemy cruiser. Both ships were destroyed. 1,500 human crew. Unknown enemy casualties. Hour 3. The human fleet had destroyed 8 Drath ships. They had lost 2. The math was terrible, but better than anyone had expected. Taiho watched another wave of missiles approach on the tactical display. Yunji, how are the refugees doing? 7 ships have reached the jump point, sir. They are away. 10 more are still in transit. Then we keep fighting. On his view screen, Taiho could see the Drath fleet regrouping. They had expected an easy victory. They had expected the humans to break and run. Instead, they had found something else entirely. They had found people willing to die for strangers. And they did not know what to do with that. A new transmission came through. It was the Drath commander again. Human captain, the Drath growled. Why do you not surrender? You have made your point. Your species is brave. We acknowledge this. Withdraw now, and we will let you live. Taiho laughed. It was a tired sound. You still do not understand, do you? We are not here because we want to prove something. We are not here because we want glory. We are here because those people behind us need help. And we will help them until we cannot help them anymore. You will die. Probably. But the refugees will live. And that is all that matters. He cut the channel again. The battle continued. The Soul's Light was breaking apart around him. But Taiho did not retreat. None of them retreated, because some things were worth dying for. The Bizen's memory died at hour 6. Captain Sujin had fought her ship until there was almost nothing left. Her shields were gone. Half her weapons were destroyed. Fire burned through 3 decks. But she was still fighting when 2 draft cruisers trapped her between them. There was no way out. Sujin knew this. Her crew knew it too. On the bridge of the Soul's Light, Taiho heard her final transmission. Her voice was calm, almost peaceful. Soul's Light, this is Bizan's memory. We are surrounded. Engines are gone. Weapons at 10%. A pause. It has been an honor, Captain Taiho. Tell them we did not run. Sujin, wait. Taiho started. Initiating reactor overload. For Thiessen. For Earth. For everyone who cannot fight for themselves. The Bizan's memory exploded. The blast was so bright that Taiho had to shield his eyes. When he looked again, the Bizan's memory was gone. But so were the 2 draft cruisers that had trapped her. Sujin had taken them with her. Taiho said nothing. There were no words for this. He just watched the debris drift through space and whispered a prayer for the 800 souls who had just given everything. The ancient star fell at hour 9. Captain Junho had held his position at the far end of the evacuation corridor for 3 hours. His ship had taken more damage than any other. Her hull was breached in 40 places. Atmosphere was venting from a dozen decks, but Junho refused to move. The refugees need just 2 more hours, he had said when Taiho ordered him to pull back. We can give them 2 more hours. He was wrong. The ancient star lasted 40 minutes. The Drath focused their fire on the old ship, pouring missiles and energy beams into her broken hull. Junho fired back with whatever weapons still worked. Even when his crew started dying around him. Even when the bridge itself caught fire. His last transmission was to his granddaughter back on Earth. Hana, this is your grandfather. I am sorry I will not be there for your birthday. But I want you to know something. I died doing something good. I died helping people who needed help. And if you ever wonder what kind of man I was, I want you to remember this. I did not look away. The ancient star broke apart. There were no survivors. By hour 12, only 4 human ships remained. The Soul's Light had lost half her crew. The main bridge was destroyed. Taiho now commanded from an auxiliary control room deep in the ship's core. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. 2 of his ribs were broken, but he was still giving orders. Status report, he croaked. Lieutenant Yunji looked up from her damaged console. She was covered in soot, and her left arm hung limp at her side. Shields at 5%. Main weapons offline. We have partial control of secondary batteries. She paused. Sir, we have confirmed 17 million Velen refugees have reached the jump point. They are safe. 17 million. Taiho let that number sink in. 17 million people who would live because 12 ships had chosen to fight. And the enemy fleet? The Drath have lost 43 ships, sir. They have 269 remaining. 43. The humans had destroyed 43 Drath warships. It was impossible. It should not have happened. But human ships had fought with a fury that the Drath had never seen before. They had taken risks that no sane military commander would take. They had sacrificed everything. Sir, Yunji said suddenly, her voice strange. I am detecting new contacts. Taiho's heart sank. Reinforcements. The Drath had called for help. Of course they had. The battle had gone on too long, embarrassed them too much. How many? He asked wearily. Yunji stared at her screen. Her eyes went wide. 400 ships, sir. 400. Taiho closed his eyes. It was over. They had held for 12 hours. They had saved 17 million lives. But now it was over. All ships, he said into the com. This is Soul's Light. Enemy reinforcements incoming. It has been an honor serving with you. Give them everything we have left. Sir, Yunji interrupted. The new ships. They are not Drath. Taiho's eyes snapped open. What? The signatures are not Drath. They are. I cannot believe this. Yunji looked at him with tears running down her face. Sir, they are Arzelian and Morith, and species I do not recognize. 400 ships from at least 20 different civilizations. On the view screen, the new fleet emerged from jump space. They were beautiful. Massive Arzelian dreadnoughts with golden hulls. Morith carriers shaped like crescents. Ships of every shape and size, bearing flags from across the galaxy. A communication channel opened. The voice that came through was deep and rumbling. It was Arzelian. Human vessels, this is Fleet Commander Torax of the Arzelian First Armada. We have been watching your battle. The Galactic Concord has been watching your battle. Taiho could barely speak. Commander, why are you here? There was a long pause. Because we were wrong. Taiho did not understand. What? For 14 hours, we watched your 12 ships fight an empire. We watched your crews die, one by one, without retreating, without surrendering. We watched Captain Sujin give her life to protect strangers she had never met. We watched Captain Jonho refuse to leave his post, even as his ship burned around him. The Arzelian's voice was heavy with something Taiho had never heard from them before. Shame. The Concord voted to abandon the Velen because we calculated that helping them was not worth the cost. We were practical. We were logical. We were cowards. Another voice joined the channel. This one was the strange echoing voice of the Morith Collective. We calculated a 94% probability of Velen extinction. We did not calculate that anyone would pay this price for strangers. We did not account for. The Morith paused, as if searching for a word they had never used before. We did not account for love. Across the system, the Drath fleet had stopped firing. They were watching the new arrivals with what might have been fear. They had come to commit genocide. They had not come to fight a real war. The Arzelian spoke again. Commander Drax of the Hegemony, this is your only warning. Withdraw your forces from Velen space immediately. The Galactic Concord has reversed its decision. The Velen are now under our protection. For a long moment, nothing happened. Taiho watched the tactical display. The Drath ships were not moving. Then, slowly, they began to turn. One by one, the warships of the Hegemony pulled back from Thesan. They formed up in a defensive formation, then began moving toward the edge of the system. They were leaving. Yunji let out a sob. Sir, the Drath are retreating. They are actually retreating. Taiho slumped in his chair. He could not believe it. 12 ships had held the line against 300. 8 ships had been destroyed. Thousands of humans had died, but they had won. No, he corrected himself. They had not won. They had survived long enough for the galaxy to find its conscience. The Arzelian commander spoke once more. Human captain, what is your status? Taiho looked around at his broken ship, at his wounded crew, at the empty spaces where his friends used to be. We have 4 ships remaining, he said. Significant damage. Many casualties. He paused. But we are still here. You are more than here, the Arzelian said. You are the reason we came. You showed us what we had forgotten, that some things cannot be measured in numbers, that some costs are worth paying, that true strength is not in weapons or shields. Then what is it? Taiho asked. It is in choosing to stand when everyone else runs. It is in dying for strangers because they needed help. It is in being human. Taiho closed his eyes. He thought of Sujin, of Junho, of all the names he would have to add to the memorial when this was over. We are not heroes, he said quietly. We just did what was right. Yes, the Arzelian agreed. And that is why you are heroes. The battle for Thesan was over, but its echoes would last forever. The Velen homeworld was healing. The fires had stopped. The smoke had cleared. Where cities had burned, new buildings were rising from the ashes. Not just Velen buildings, but structures from dozens of different species. The galaxy had come to help rebuild what the Drath had destroyed. In the center of the restored capital city, a monument had been built. It was not like anything the Velen had ever created before. 12 stone pillars stood in a circle, each one carved from rock brought from Earth. At the center of the circle, a flame burned in a crystal bowl. The Velen engineers had designed the flame to produce light that could be seen from orbit. It would burn for 1,000 years. Each pillar bore the name of a human ship. The Soul's Light, the Bizen's Memory, the Ancient Star, the Dagu Rising, the Guangzhu's Pride, the Sejong's Will, the Motpo's Courage, and 5 others. Below each ship's name were carved the names of every crew member who had served. The living and the dead together. Ambassador Yuna stood at the base of the monument. She was wearing the same uniform she had worn in the Concord Hall 6 months ago. But she looked different now. Older somehow. The weight of what had happened showed in her eyes. Beside her stood Admiral Jisoo. The Admiral's silver hair had gone completely white in the months since the battle. She did not speak of it, but everyone knew why. She had sent her people to die. She had watched them sacrifice themselves one by one. She would carry that burden for the rest of her life. Captain Myray stood with them. Her right arm was still in a healing sleeve. She had been badly burned when the Daegu Rising's engine room exploded in Hour 10. She was one of only 47 crew members who had survived her ship's destruction. The rest had stayed at their posts until the end. The plaza around the monument was filled with people. Velen by the thousands, their pale faces turned toward the flame. But also Arzelians, their massive bodies draped in ceremonial robes. Morath observers, their linked minds taking in every detail. Representatives from 100 species, all gathered to witness this moment. The high empath of the Velen stepped forward. They were an old being, their skin the color of moonlight, their eyes large and filled with depths that seemed endless. They moved slowly, with great dignity, until they stood before the human delegation. "Today we gather to remember," the high empath said. Their voice was soft, but it carried across the entire plaza, amplified by technology, but also by something deeper. Every Velen could feel the emotions behind those words. And somehow, so could everyone else. Before the humans came, they continued, we believed the galaxy operated on logic, on calculation, on the cold mathematics of profit and loss. We believed that other species would help us because it was in their interest to do so. When they abandoned us, we thought it was because we were not valuable enough. The high empath paused. Their eyes swept across the gathered crowd. We were wrong. We were wrong about everything. They turned to face the human delegation directly. The humans came not because it was logical. It was not logical. They came not because it was in their interest. It was against their interest. They came not because they calculated that we were worth the cost. They calculated that they would die. They came anyway. The high empath walked toward Yuna. Each step was slow and deliberate. When they reached her, they raised one of their 4-fingered hands and placed it gently on her shoulder. For the Velen, this was a gesture of profound intimacy. It meant trust. It meant family. We felt you, the high empath whispered, though everyone could still hear. Through all those hours of battle, we felt you. Every one of you. We felt your fear. We felt your pain. We felt you dying. Their luminous eyes glistened with tears. And through it all, we felt you choosing to stay. Choosing us. Strangers you had never met. People you would never know. Yuna's voice was thick when she spoke. We could not turn away. Humanity. We have made many mistakes in our history. We have hurt each other. We have failed to help when we should have helped. But we are trying to be better. And being better means showing up when it matters. You did more than show up, the High Empath said. You gave us back our faith. Not in the galaxy. Not in the Concord. Faith in each other. Faith that somewhere, someone cares enough to sacrifice for strangers. They stepped back and addressed the crowd again. Let it be recorded in the histories of every species present. Let it be taught to every child in every school on every world. When the galaxy forsook us, humanity declared, "We stand with you," and they meant it. They proved it with their blood. Admiral Jisoo stepped forward. Her voice was steady despite the emotion in her eyes. We lost 8 ships, she said. 4,312 crew members. I knew many of them personally. I sent them to fight knowing they would probably not come back. She paused. They went anyway. Not because I ordered them to. Because they chose to. She looked at the monument, at the names carved in stone. Captain Sujin of the Bison's memory rammed her ship into 2 enemy cruisers to protect the refugee convoy. She saved 300,000 lives with that decision. Captain Junho of the Ancient Star held his position until his ship broke apart around him. He was 87 years old. He had grandchildren waiting for him back home. He died so that strangers could live. The names kept coming. Stories of courage. Stories of sacrifice. Stories of ordinary people who had chosen to be extraordinary. These were not soldiers trained for war, Jisoo said. They were explorers, scientists, engineers, people who joined the fleet to see the stars, not to die in them. But when the time came, they did not hesitate. They knew what was right, and they did it. The Arzelian fleet commander Torax stepped forward from the crowd. He was massive, towering over the humans by several feet. But when he spoke, his voice was humble. I have commanded the Ozelian First Armada for 60 years, he said. I have fought in 30 battles. I have destroyed enemies that threatened our empire. But I never understood true strength until I watched 12 human ships stand against 300. He turned to face Yuna and Jisoo. We have much to learn from your species. Not about weapons or tactics. About courage. About compassion. About the meaning of the word we. The Morth Collective spoke next, their chorus of voices echoing strangely in the air. We are beings of calculation. We process data. We analyze probabilities. We have never understood emotion. A pause. But watching your ships die, one by one, while the survivors kept fighting, something changed in our calculations. A variable we had not accounted for. We call it the human factor. We are still trying to understand it. Captain Myray laughed softly. It was a tired sound, but genuine. There is nothing to understand, she said. It is simple. You see someone in trouble. You help them. You do not ask what they can do for you. You do not calculate the cost. You help because helping is right. But you died, the Morith pressed. So many of you died. Mare's expression grew serious. Yes, we did. And if we had to do it again, we would make the same choice. She looked at the monument, at the names of her friends. Because some things are worth dying for. And protecting the helpless is one of them. The ceremony continued. Flowers were laid at the base of each pillar. Songs were sung in languages human voices could not speak. But the meaning was clear. Gratitude. Remembrance. Hope. As the sun set over the restored city of Thiessen, the eternal flame burned brighter against the darkening sky. It would burn for 1,000 years. A light visible from space. A reminder to every ship passing through this system. Here is the place where humanity kept its promise. Admiral. Jisoo stood alone at the edge of the plaza as the crowds began to leave. She watched the flame and thought about all the young people who would never go home. All the letters she would have to write. All the families who would never be whole again. Captain Myray found her there. They stood in silence for a long moment. Was it worth it? Myray finally asked. Jisoo considered the question. She thought about Captain Sujin's sacrifice, about Captain Jonho's last message to his granddaughter, about the 17 million Valain who were alive because 12 ships had held the line. Ask me again in 100 years, she said, when this is the story that every species tells their children about what it means to be good. When standing with you becomes a phrase that transcends language. When the human factor becomes the galactic standard. Mireille nodded slowly. Above them, the stars began to appear. Somewhere out there, new ships were being built. New crews were being trained. The fleet that humanity had sacrificed would be rebuilt stronger than before. Not because they wanted to fight wars, but because they wanted to be ready for the next time someone needed help. The flame burned on Dot and across the galaxy. A new phrase began to spread. When species wanted to express solidarity, when they wanted to say that they would not abandon each other, when they wanted to make a promise that meant something, they used a human expression translated into 1,000 languages. We stand with you. The humans had taught the galaxy how to say it. More importantly, they had taught them how to mean it.